We are also attempting to go live on YouTube. So there could be some technical problems with that, but we're still, of course, here on Facebook.
But it's a new year, so
Yeah,
we're trying
Happy
new
New Year,
things.
guys! Happy New Year's. We'll
Welcome to the first show of 2021.
Hello, Crystal. Yeah, I hope everyone
Hmm.
had a really nice New Year's. I certainly had fun watching New Year's Evil, which we will get to shortly. We will be talking about Keanu Reeves today, but per usual, we will first start with our previous film. But before we do that, we just shoot the shit for a little bit. So, hi, Smear. How was your 3-day weekend?
It was very nice. Got a lot of relaxation in. That's all I really wanted. A few drinks, some games, some good food, all those fabulous things I was able to do with my housemates here. So we stayed in, did not travel anywhere,
Good.
and just ate, drank, and were married together for a few days. And then the work week started, and it was 2021, and we are still wondering whether we live in the Matrix or not.
Seriously. I definitely was fairly lazy.
Fairly lazy, yeah.
I'm trying to remember exactly what I did. I was definitely lazy on Friday. I did watch some good movies. I've been watching the Hunger Games films. Mostly because
Again?
well, I bought them months ago. They had a 4 movie set at Target on DVD for like $15. And I was like, well,
That's
that's
what always gets you.
yeah, and so I got them, but I haven't watched them since getting them. And my dad hadn't seen them before, so we watched the second one last night, and he's especially really, really enjoying them. So I'll have to work the previous or the last two into my movie schedule this week.
Crystal is pointing out that we also saw that you put your kitty carrier on wheels to use this weekend.
Yeah, we're experimenting with it. I do see it must be on YouTube because I see one of my old friends, Eddie, over here. He's got this is from YouTube because we can see comments from both. So I wonder if people, if you're on Facebook, I wonder if you could see YouTube comments and vice versa.
We will be getting there, Aaron. We're gonna get to. We're gonna get to Keanu shortly.
Yes. But first, we're going to talk about New Year's Evil. Let's just go ahead and get to that because I know people are just so excited to talk about Keanu as our
yes.
New Year's Evil. This is available on Amazon Prime. This was our last holiday horror film for the month, and it was fun. Actually, the music was the best part of it.
100% agreed. I was like, they weren't necessarily punk.
No,
they had the look, right?
And they looked punk, and then they're like, oh, they're playing rock, and then like blues.
Whatever it was, I actually really enjoyed all the musical performances. I loved her costume. The whole plot was it was a very strange plot. Really just about toxic masculinity to ring in the decade of the 1980s. That's
horrifying for anyone.
And murderously horrifying in this movie, as it turns out. I can't, it wasn't super gory or anything, so I feel like I wonder, maybe my mom just didn't like this one as much when I was a kid, so that's why it wasn't in our regular VHS rotation in my horror film education as a child far too young to be watching that many kinds of movies. But I feel like this one we would have all just kind of laughed off and had a good time with. It would have been the first time I heard that style of music as a child, because most of the music around my house was like from Indian films and Motown, and then my mother loved musicals, like American musicals, so it was like that kind of stuff was really what I listened to the most. So we were not like a rock and roll of the late 70s, early 80s household. So it wasn't until my sisters got into it and I went into their records that I started hearing this kind of music. So it was a lovely blast from the past for me in that sense.
Yeah. The opening song, I'm assuming it was written for the film. The song is called New Year's Evil, and it starts once the credits hit, it starts with the song, and immediately I was like, yeah, like, what is this song? And then I love male rock singer with falsetto hitting those little I was like, love it. I want to try and download this song somewhere because it was good. Yeah, but it was a little complicated at times. Like here, Crystal saying, like, I'm not sure about this son character. Was it him in the end? There
Okay,
were some, a couple little twists.
I think I figured that out. So I was wondering that too, because remember there's that one part where he's like cutting up obviously he's upset with his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And you see him like cutting up her stockings and he pulls them over his face. And it's almost like, I think that was thrown in there to maybe throw you off to be like, oh, maybe this is the person making the calls. But I'm like, I don't know how that would work because we know that the person making the calls is using the little voice modifier and using phone booths, and you can see who it is. So the one big surprise is when the guy walks into her and she's like, oh, it's my husband. And we're like, whoa, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that. But then they've linked those two male characters in her life to being two men who feel like they're being neglected because she's got a successful career and she actually pursues it. So her husband feels neglected and her son feel neglected. So there's like this linking of them in that way. And then I feel like they're trying to show somehow that the kid is basically becoming his dad. And then at the end, you see that sort of happen because the dad doesn't quite survive, but his hideous, toxic spirit does in the form of his son. And he's now wearing the mask that his dad was wearing before instead of the red stocking that was his mom's. That was like kind of how I sorted it out in my brain afterwards. But when he puts on the mask, I'm like, wait a minute, is he also killing people? Like, I got confused there. But that actor, that's the same guy who plays the sort of doofusy boyfriend in Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yeah, I realized that. I was like, where have I seen him before? And I looked it up and said, oh, that's, we watched that in, that was in October, I think, when we did.
I think so, yes. It was one of our cult classic choices.
Yeah, but it was fun. I think it was a little better. I mean, again, this just got scathing reviews.
Scathingly bad reviews. I'm like, this feels like it fits in with 80s horror to a T, and it was totally fun.
I mean, compared to other cheesy 80s slasher films, I didn't think this was necessarily any different.
Crystal points out, good scare moments was the elevator shaft moment. That was pretty terrifying. I will say they got some good points on that scene when she's like chained up underneath it and he's like raising it. I'm like, okay, that is also maybe another triggering fear of mine, is like being in an elevator when a cable snaps and then being just plummeting to your death. That's why I love the Tower of Terror ride at Disneyland so much. Because it's not going to happen to you. Disney won't let that happen to you, at least not in their parks. Or maybe it has hundreds of times and it's been completely hidden up by their corporate overlords. Who knows? But I feel safer in there, but it gives you that thrill of it almost happening, and then you're okay. You get the endorphin rush of being okay, and you're fine. That scene in this movie was really good. And I have the same fear, Crystal. You're not alone.
Well, New Year's Evil, if you didn't see it, this is available on Prime. It's included on there. And at least look up the song. Look up the New Year's Evil song, because I want to see if they have it on iTunes, because I'm old and I still download things from iTunes. Yeah, check it out. And now we'll get on to the main event that people are dying to hear about. Keanu. This is one of the photos from his Yves Saint Laurent campaign that he did, because he's a model as well.
Of course.
So my minimal personal experience with him, I mentioned this briefly in our last show, but a couple years ago, I was waiting outside my UCB Franklin in Hollywood, waiting for. I was with my improv class. We were going to be doing our improv show. It was like the end of class show, and we're waiting there. And first, me and Eric, this guy in their class, we both saw Keanu just like walking, like on the sidewalk. He was carrying a motorcycle helmet. Honestly, it looked fairly similar, where he looks here, just like this long hair, beard, leather jacket. And we both just were kind of like, that's Keanu Reeves. And then slowly the rest of the class started noticing, like, that's Keanu Reeves. And then so he walked by and we just froze. We didn't know what to do. We were just like, don't look at him. And then then he ended up eating in the restaurant that's right next to that theater. And we were like, we heard that he's really nice. Should we go in there and like invite him to come see our improv show? Like, and looking back, we probably should have.
You didn't do that? Why did you not do that?
We were trying to respect his space and privacy, but we definitely were freaking out. And then I was really excited because one of my, Bree, who one of our friends from Berkeley, Bree Russell, she loves Keanu, and that was something that like we always would kind of talk about. Like we'll send each other Keanu photos and stuff. She happened to be coming to my show that day. She hadn't seen any of my improv shows, and she was coming, and she got to see him, and I was so excited that she was like, Keanu. She got inside the theater. We were like, oh my God, Keanu's outside. Yeah, we were really excited. But he is just like, he's a cool dude. His acting has sometimes been panned for being wooden. Certainly anytime he has tried doing an accent, people have given him a lot of shit for it, even though he, like, for example, his Bram Stoker's Dracula accent. Apparently he worked really, really hard trying to get that British accent down, but in doing so, it came off as a little too stiff.
The effort was very palpable in that accent. But, that's just, I think it's a case of more like, maybe not the right casting in terms of voice for certain roles, but like when he's I think there's a lot, he can do a wide range of things still. And he has cast in quite a few different movies. And I think he is more malleable than people give him credit for in terms of his acting skill. It's just that sometimes his style and his general demeanor really clash with certain types of material. And then sometimes it is like sparks flying, genius addition to certain movies. It's just like he just works perfectly in this context, and you weren't even sure just how well he would work. But I think he also gets a lot of work because he's like one of the nicest Hollywood stars there ever has been. Like, you never hear stories about him being a jerk to anybody. You just hear stories about him like helping old ladies on the bus. The fact that he even rides the bus in LA instead of driving sometimes, just because he feels like it. Like, I hear nothing but nice reports about him, like in terms of what it was like to work with him. You never hear any weird backstage drama with him. So you can imagine that when they're, he must also have a really great agent, but when people are thinking like, who we're going to cast, this person's up, like, if you have the option to hire someone, will be easygoing and will do whatever they can to make the movie as good as they can, and really is pleasant for everyone else to work with, it's like that person's going to get a lot of work. If you happen to also be able to sell a big movie and make a lot of money for them, and you're like that, it's like he'll probably be on lists forever for any kind of role that's appropriate for his age.
Yeah, and he's in his 50s now, and he's still this huge action star with the John Wick movies, which I admittedly have never seen any of those. But I've seen quite a few of his other films, and the fact that he can pull off things like Bill and Ted, to some romantic comedies, to drama, to being this action star. I mean, right there, he has such a range. Crystal here was talking about Much Ado About Nothing. I love that movie, and say what you will about him in there, he looks hot in that movie. He's shirtless at one point. I think one of his servants is like giving him a massage, and he's like sweaty. Oh God, he's so hot.
I remember that scene.
Yes, questionable accent, but he plays the bad guy in that. But let's talk a little bit about him. He was born September 2nd, 1964 in Lebanon, of all places. He is Canadian, but his parents happened to be like working in Lebanon at the time, and so that's where he was born. Moved back to Canada. His parents divorced. He then kind of bounced around. He went to Sydney. He went to New York City. His mother married and remarried several times, some of which were people on the more creative side. Like she married a Broadway and film director, and then a guy who worked in the film industry as a rock music promoter and things like that. He hasn't really known his father since he was like 13. I think that was the last time he ended up seeing him. But his father just like took off. It's like, nope. For a while, he entertained the idea of being a professional hockey player. When he was around 15, he decided that acting is what he was really interested in and started acting in high school. He did go to 4 different high schools. He was expelled from at least
Oh.
one, just for, I don't know, kind of talking back to teachers and things like that. He did drop out of high school when he was 17. He ended up moving to LA when he was 20. He was working for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation as a youth like correspondent on something called Going Great. He was on TV in several episodes of things and films. His first feature film, I believe, was The Night Before.
Are you sure?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Youngblood in 1986. So he was in a few films in the late 80s, but it wasn't until Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which came out in 1989, that really got him noticed. I mean, that film, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie. That was just like kind of a surprise, delightful film that even critics liked, of just like, this is just so lovable and stupid. And it's great. It's a fantastic film. Some people have said that that was his best role. Being Ted.
Oh, come now. Those are people are just being mean. There are
He
other good
is,
roles.
wouldn't it? He is. I can't picture anyone else doing that role at this point.
Oh, it's completely his own, of course.
Yeah, after that, he was in Parenthood by Ron Howard. Of course, was in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And in the early 90s, he was in some pretty interesting films, such as My Own Private Idaho.
Gus Van Sant movie where he plays
Point
a
Break, which
hustler.
someone mentioned over here. I think Walter mentioned, and they all had to like train to be surfers, and that he had no surfing experience at all. Kind of had some hits and misses in the early 90s, but then came Speed in 94, which of course was a massive hit. We'll probably end up doing that movie at some point, just because it's such a solid, fun action film. But then after Speed, also had kind of some career ups and downs.
Well, he also chose to do more independent films. So I wouldn't necessarily call them ups and downs. I would say he chose to do films that were not as high profile as the big Hollywood action films. He actually diversified the roles that he took on.
Yeah, I'm referring to that too, as just like how people reacted to these roles that he was in. But he did intentionally, like he would do a big blockbuster and then be like, nah. Like they were supposed to do a Speed 2 not too long after the first Speed, and he turned that down, even though they were going to give him like $12 million or something. And
yeah, they gave it to someone else, and it was on a boat, and it's been a joke for comedians ever since. But that was clearly a good choice on his part, because that movie was never going to capture the zeitgeist of the first one.
Yeah.
And like I said, like he's kind of one of those people who's like, hey, I just want to take it easy. I'll do a couple low profile projects. And some of those projects were also, it wasn't necessarily so much his success as an actor, and then it was just that the roles were so different from what people knew him for. Right. So I don't want to see a movie where he's playing a depressed alcoholic or somebody who's trying to sell his body to survive, like in My Own Private, like that movie caught critics more than audiences, I think, because that movie also had River Phoenix in it. Like, there was a lot of young early star power. But then I forgot there was a few movies that he did where he was playing much darker characters in much darker films. So it was like, if you were going to see a movie because you loved Keanu Reeves, because you loved Speed and you loved Dracula and you loved Bill and Ted, and then you go and see this movie about a depressed alcoholic who's suicidal, you're like, okay, well, that wasn't as much fun. I thought I was going to have fun. And then they leave with this bad impression of him in a weird way. It's weird how that works for him. But then he always seems to come back with some movie that like makes you love him again. Like, and of course, that's where The Matrix sort of came in at that point, I think.
Yeah. So, his career did. I mean, I've seen like he was in movies like in the late 90s.
Devil's Advocate.
Yeah, I have seen The Devil's Advocate. I liked that movie actually. I've only seen it once.
Garbage.
I remember
super entertaining garbage.
But it wasn't until 1999 when The Matrix came out where he was really back on top, and I would say it's pretty much been on top since then. with all of the sequels. Not to say that he hasn't been in some movies where people have kind of criticized his performance, but he's been really productive the last like 8, 9 years as far as being in all these John Wick movies. I mean, there were several. I think there was one year where he had like 6 movies come out, whether it was him doing voice acting in something. But yeah, just a lot. He directed a film too. He directed. I'm going to forget what this is called.
It wasn't A Walk in the Clouds, Crystal. Sorry. I remember that movie too. That was another big hit. It was like, okay, he found a romantic drama to be popular and great. Good. Another way to sell yourself. Jim apparently also got to meet Jim Vest here. Said that he got to spend 2 days on set with him. That he was super friendly and very gracious.
Well,
that's what I usually hear.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many. How many memes have been made about him? There's like the sad Keanu meme that went around. Man of Tai Chi. That's the film that he directed. That came out in 2013. Did not do well, but apparently it has some really awesome martial arts scenes in it. So it was kind of praised for that. Also has Tiger Hu Chen in that, but did not do well financially. Yeah, but he's awesome. I don't know anyone who doesn't like Keanu Reeves. He's just such a sweet guy. His philanthropic work has also been really great. He's donated tons and tons of money. I think someone over here mentioned like his sister had leukemia. He started a private cancer foundation, which helps Children's Hospital. Even just recently as this year, he volunteered for Camp Rainbow Gold, which is a Idaho Children Cancer Society. This is what he has said. Money is the last thing I think about. I could live on what I have already made for the next few centuries. And supposedly with some of his massive fees that he got for being in The Matrix, I think he gave some of that money back to the special effects artists. Some people have said, I don't know if that really applies to, of course, they're making a Matrix 4. I don't know if it was more like maybe for this fourth one, he renegotiated his fee of just like, hey, give me less and whatever money you're going to give me, give to these special effects people. But he was in Dangerous Liaison. Mm-hmm. That was one of his early 90s films. But we love him. We love Keanu.
I would love to be buddies with Keanu. Like there was a video recently of him. Basically, they've had a lot of those videos of like celebrities reading tweets about themselves, and like it was some of the things people did say about him were pretty interesting. But it was just always like he just finds it charming, even when people say things that could be read as shady. He kind of just finds the humor in it and he laughs it off, and it's like. Like he's just such, I don't know, it's such a calming presence in some way. I don't ever despair when Keanu Reeves is in a movie, even if he doesn't fit into that movie very well. It just makes me happy to see him be in something successful, but he's clearly always made good choices for himself. Like he's kept himself sane, kept himself healthy. He's had a nice wide range of stuff to keep him interested in doing films throughout his life. Like, he never seems burned out or bitter about anything. It's like, he's clearly worked out a very perfect existence for himself. And I just want to see him continue that. Can you imagine what he'll be like in old age? It's really hard because he's already,
he's aging very well.
He's aging very well. He's in his 50s already, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. He's 56.
So
yeah.
Like it seems mind-boggling. I can't imagine 20 more years from now and he's in his 70s. What is he going to be like? What's he going to look like? There's going to be another Bill and Ted movie.
He's going to be the nicest old man. Oh, yeah, Walter's saying about it's the Hawaiian side that keeps him calm. Yeah, I think his father is Hawaiian or has some Hawaiian in him. But he's just awesome. Well, let's go ahead and talk about The Matrix. Now, this movie, we picked this in particular to talk about Keanu. We have a Patreon account, and this was from one of our screenwriter Patreons. My aunt Julia Lejoie, Dr. Julia Lejoie, and she suggested this film because my cousin Matt Her son, he passed away in 2008. He was in a motorcycle accident, and his birthday was 2 days ago. And this was one of his favorite movies. So I always want to acknowledge my cousin Matt Bose, and this was one of his favorite films. And so we thought we would pick this and talk about who else Keanu for our Man Crush Monday. But this came out in 1999. Of course, was a massive hit. Has garnered 2 sequels, soon to be 3 sequels. This was directed by the Wachowskis, formerly known as the Wachowski brothers. Now they are Lana and Lily Wachowski. This was filmed in Australia for a little over $60 million. I think it was like 63 million. And they mostly filmed it in Australia because in the US, this would have cost about twice as much to make. This was nominated for 4 Oscars, and it won all 4. Some technical, I think it won for sound, editing, of course, special effects, which were really groundbreaking at the time. And on IMDb, this is the top, out of all the IMDb movies, this is number 16 as far as the top rated movies, with an 8.7 out of 10, which I think is interesting.
Well, what's funny is that it's, even if you maybe can dunk on this movie a little bit in retrospect in terms of some of the writing, something maybe is overly sentimentalized, something is oversimplified here. It indulges in some, oh, hello, Aunt Julia. Thank you for this choice. But this was a hugely revolutionary movie. It was kind of like, I remember when the X-Files first came out, and that sort of popularized the idea that everything that you've been taught is normal and real, like, is actually as much of a construction as everything else, and that there may be another truth out there. So like like I was a teenager when that show was on, and I was like, oh my god, everything all about Detective Fox Mulder and all this. I was an Unsolved Mysteries kid too, so I feel like I was led into this movie in a way. I don't think I had the same passionate response as everyone else did, but I remember being swept up in the zeitgeist of it. But this is another movie that kind of like was like, oh, it makes you question your reality. What's real? What has been taught to you or fed to you, and are you seeing what's actually out there? And you have a choice, and that the idea that you have a choice to see the world for what it is, or to live in this constructed fantasy in which you're just a cog in a machine, literally. And of course, it's also now inspired like special effects. It was like revolutionary special effects in this movie that have been parodied, satirized, and copied endlessly by so many filmmakers.
I think after the scene where he's doing his back bend, dodging the bullet, I think I read that just by 2002 it had already been parodied, I think, about 20 times in films. Just in a couple of years. I didn't see this movie until I was maybe like 17. And and then I think I watched the first 3, and I remember this as being one of those movies of like, The Matrix, like, and then I actually watched it, and it's like, oh,
I saw it in theaters. I love this sort of like the kinky edge of their costuming, a lot of latex and rubber and leather, all black. You even get like Lawrence Fishburne has equal billing at the top with Keanu Reeves, which
one of our previous Man Crush Monday guys. We talked about Lawrence Fishburne back in November. I read too that the budget, even though I had over $60 million budget, that was tight for a movie of this magnitude. And even some of the costumes apparently were just made out of like really cheap material. Just like the cheapest you can get, especially with Carrie Ann Moss. That was just like the cheapest like plastic outfit you could possibly get.
That must have been so
really comfortable. Yeah, and she did a lot of her own stunts. Both she and Hugo Weaving, I guess they had injured themselves kind of early on in the film, and like so early, I think she had twisted her ankle, but she didn't tell anyone. Because like as so early on, they could still recast me, and I want to be in this, so she kind of fought through it. And then Hugo Weaving, something happened with his, he had to have surgery or something, but they ended up pushing all of his stunts towards the end of shooting so he could recover. Yeah, but this movie, I mean, so influential. Oh yeah, wait, why he turned down the Matrix? Yeah, so Will Smith was almost in the Matrix, as was Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock was almost in the
Oof.
Matrix. Yeah, but
Sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways.
yeah, I think she was offered the role while Will Smith was still attached to it, and then I guess because of that, didn't think it was. She didn't want to do it. But
Ooh.
Will Smith, yeah, he said something about how like he's overall. Oh, well, the sad thing was like he turned down this movie and then did Wild Wild West.
He made the worst choice of all. A big budget flop
Yeah,
versus like a movie that like captured the imaginations of like teenagers and 20 somethings over the entire world. Like everybody was obsessed with this movie. It made so much money. It's had 2 sequels that also made a ton of money.
yeah, hundreds of
Keanu
millions
Reeves said he can live forever off of probably just the residuals
of dollars.
from these films alone. Which, like I said, frees him up to do kind of whatever he wants as an actor. He wants to do a stupid horror movie with Eli Roth. Go ahead. He even got one of like he had a line in that movie that's like hysterically bad, but became a thing on its own on Twitter. We'll never talk about that movie. It's terrible, but it was fun. It was a fun movie that he could do something that he didn't really get paid a lot for because he's gonna live fat off of this forever. So Will Smith made a horrible choice because Wild Wild West was a bad movie. It made no money and it
So
cost a
bad.
fortune, and
So
nobody gave shit about it. But this one, everybody cared. Even if you didn't really like the movie, you still kind of had to
yeah,
appreciate it because it had power over everyone. Of course, now we even have you can see the ubiquitous quality of its message because people on the far left and the far right and everywhere in between, everybody sort of has a political angle that they find from this movie as well. It's also become sort of like a cultural joke of like,
mhm,
anything that seems unreal, like, oh, are we in the Matrix? Like there was like those kind of jokes for a while
yeah. It's a glitch in the
after this
Matrix.
movie.
Glitch in the Matrix. Oh yeah. So this movie, I'm guessing just because we are streaming on YouTube right now as well, we might have some new viewers. And the way the book club for movies works, this is our 42nd week of doing this.
Wow.
So thank you for joining us now. But the plan is we're going to watch The Matrix tonight. Tomorrow we're going to come back and we're going to discuss a little bit just like after the movie before we move on to our next subject and so forth. So
Like a book club.
sometimes some people, it's like they see that we're going to be talking about Keanu Reeves. They get on here at the beginning of our show and they're like, why aren't you guys talking about Keanu Reeves? Like, we will. So sometimes if you're new to this, if you haven't seen the movie, maybe come back in like 5-10 minutes. Um, but otherwise, just watch the movie and come back tomorrow and talk about it. So this movie, I couldn't find this on any streaming things. You might have to rent this one. I checked all the ones I could find. So yeah, you might
Um,
just have to go ahead and rent this.
if you are of a certain age, like Crystal and I, Crystal is younger than me, definitely, but who were like maybe I was definitely among the first people to buy a DVD player when this came out. This was also one of the movies that I feel like you used to get like a pack of 5 DVDs when you'd buy a DVD player back in the day. Like everywhere you bought one, you'd get like these 5 free movies that they would just came with the player for a while. Like The Matrix was one of those 5 movies. I feel like Practical Magic was one. This was one. They were like, I think they were all Warner Brothers films, maybe. I don't know. There was some contractual deal worked out. So you get these 5 Warner Brothers movies in the cardboard snap case. So it didn't have the plastic case. It was cardboard and had the plastic
I
edge.
have those.
So you would snap open and fold it open. Um, but yeah, I believe this was one of those ones that like everybody got when you bought a DVD player. So just check your old boxes. You may actually have a DVD of this
I
in like
definitely
the
have.
same old box of your old AOL internet installation discs, maybe camping out in somewhere. It was like that. It was like they gave so many of these away. So I feel like there's a ton of people who may still have this DVD buried somewhere in their house. But if you don't want to go to all that work, it's just a few bucks to rent it on iTunes. Why not support the industry, especially now when it's been so difficult for so many people to maintain their livelihoods? during this past year without all the work that they usually get from these production of these films. So, think of that when you're watching movies, that, you want to make sure that those people who devoted their lives to putting these movies up on the screen and maybe don't ever get seen, that their work is acknowledged too by you renting this film instead of just finding it online in a torrent or something. But see, Andres knows the DVDs I'm talking about.
So again, you might have to get this one. Oh yeah, no, I have those too. I think the first DVD my family got was Jaws.
Oh.
We got our first DVD player, and we still have that original DVD. But that was just, yeah.
Look at that.
Here Andre is saying you can. Wow.
That is a steal, actually.
It's pretty good. If you are a big fan like the other ones, yeah, that is a good deal right there.
I only really like the first one.
Well, there's a fourth one that's going to come out, so maybe a good way to refresh our memory of what's going on with it. We did reveal our January calendar on Thursday, and it's on our Instagram as well. But for any new viewers, this is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the month. Tomorrow is our Director Tuesday, the first of the month, and we will be talking about Japanese director Yasuhiro Ozu. Did I say that correctly, Samir?
Yasujiro Ozu.
Yasujiro Ozu with Tokyo Story. But we have a lot of fun things going on. We do every week with a Man Crush Monday. We focus on an actor. Director Tuesdays, Woman Crush Wednesday, Genre Thursdays. This month, all of our Thursdays are going to be true crime documentaries, and then we do Cult Classic Fridays. Now, some of these say Patreon pick. Those are all people who contribute to our Patreon with the screenwriter tier or higher. If you are interested in contributing to our Patreon, I did put the link over here in the comments. It's here on the calendar. It's here on our little scrolling bar. But we've got, we have lots of options. But a really exciting month. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning here. Let me get us up here. But thank you guys for watching today. Again, please check out The Matrix tonight. Join us tomorrow at 3:30 to talk about. Wait, Andres, you worked on We Need to Talk About Kevin?
Yes, he commented on our Instagram that he worked on that set. That's why I'm like,
right. Yeah,
so maybe Andres can be part of our discussion that day on the film if he wants to join us. Maybe
Andres, send us a message. Maybe we'll get you in on. You could be live with us.
I know. I want to hear a lot.
But thank you guys for watching. Please watch The Matrix this evening. And thank you again to Aunt Julia for suggesting this movie in honor of my cousin Matt. Again, one of his favorite movies. But yeah, we'll see you all tomorrow. Have a fun evening and keep washing your hands.